Good morning from Washington, D.C., and afternoon and evening, wherever else you are. My name is Jennifer Turner, and I direct the China Environment Forum at the Wilson Center. And want to thank you today for tuning into our meeting, where we're going to put our hands on the pulse of the Global Plastic Treaty, and also look at some of the opportunities for the U.S. and Japan to work together on stemming the tide on plastic pollution in the world. Now, this meeting today is part of the China Environment Forum's Turning the Tide on Plastic Waste in Asia project. For 2 years, I've been working with Japanese partners from the Institute for Developing Economies and the Jakarta-based think tank AREA. Today, one of my kind of co-commentator moderator got Michikazu Kojima, who's going to be helping me with that. So yeah, and in this project, it's been a lot of fun. I've been able to bring together government, NGO, business, and researchers from US, Japan, and around Asia, particularly Southeast Asia and China, to be on webinars, to produce blogs. And most recently, we have a podcast series, 3 episodes, 2 of them are out, and it's about the Global Plastic Treaty. So go to my website, you could tune in. Sustainable Asia helped us produce it because I could never, well, I'm co-producing, but I don't have the tech to do the most of it. So the Global Plastic Treaty has been heavy on our minds recently since the gavel went down in March. And so I brought together some folks from Japan, the US, Vietnam, to talk about the Global Plastic Treaty. And we're going to start off, we've got 3 segments here, and we're spreading it out with the Q&A, but we're going to start off with some US and Japanese government perspectives. And then we're going to switch to the NGO view on things with 2 speakers from Osha Conservancy. And then in the final set of speakers, kind of a little mixture of learning about insights on the potential for US-Japan cooperation. And also we'll kind of wrap up with one of the Japanese negotiators giving some insights from when he was at the talks in March with the Global Plastic Treaty. So I'm first going to introduce just the first trio of speakers, and I'll introduce everyone else as we move forward. So we're going to start out with Mr. Ko Morishida, who's the director in the Global Environment Division at the International Cooperation Bureau for Japan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you so much for coming today. He's going to give a brief intro of the success of those talks in March. It's nice to have successes, and it's just nice. Just hands down, it was glorious. And he's also going to give a quick overview of Japan's role at the talks. And Mr. Hiroshi Ono, the Director General of the Global Environment Bureau in the Ministry of Environment, will say a few words about the next negotiations, which are coming very soon, end of the month, and kind of Japan's perspective on them. The 2 of them are going to make their comments in about 8 minutes. We're keeping it brief, so we have time for you in the Q&A. But also then following them, we've got Lark Williams. She leads the US Department of State's waste management team that's engaging internationally on plastic pollution and marine debris issues. She's the US lead negotiator for the talks, and it's awesome to have you here as well, Lark. And she's going to talk to us about, again, mirror the US version of kind of what was going on, where we're moving forward. So I'm going to stop now and let them take over the floor. The virtual microphone is yours, Mr. Morishida, and the rest of us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning and good evening. I'm Ko Morishida, Director of Global Environment Division in Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Japan. And distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to join this forum today. Since the United Nations Environment Assembly adopted the resolution to end plastic pollution this March, we have witnessed the growing global momentum towards the negotiation for an internationally legally binding instrument. Against this backdrop, I'm sure that today's discussion will provide a significant opportunity to unite us in combating plastic pollution crisis. Earlier than such a historic moment at UNIA 5.2, to spearhead the global effort to address this issue, Japan set out Osaka Blue Ocean Vision at the G20 Osaka Summit in 2019, which aimed to achieve zero additional pollution from marine plastic litter by 2050. At present, 87 countries and regions, including the US, share the concept of this vision. In terms of specific contributions, Japan has supported compilation and steady implementation of actions against marine plastic litter submitted by 42 countries, as well as capacity buildings and infrastructure development based on local needs. Hence, Japan has achieved solid results such as training over 6,000 people in waste management worldwide in collaboration with UNEP and the UNEP International Environmental Technology Center and the relevant institutions. In the course of providing such support, Japan has made use of its advanced technologies in Southeast Asia and other countries. While the US and Japan are the largest consumer of single-use plastics, we both have taken measures to manage waste and prevent plastics from entering the ocean. We have also been active in assisting various countries, especially in Southeast Asia, for urban infrastructure development, data collections, financing, and preventing plastic from entering the environment. In addition, Japan highly appreciates active efforts of the US as demonstrated by their prioritization of marine plastic litter, key role in negotiation on agreement on marine plastic pollution control, and the constructive contribution in UNEA 5.2. We would like to continue to work with the US to tackle the marine plastic litter issue in the international community as a whole. Now, let me take this opportunity to make an important announcement. To contribute to the upcoming treaty negotiation by drawing on Japan's experience, Japan nominated Mr. Ono Hiroshi, Director General of Global Environment Bureau, Ministry of Environment, as a candidate for co-chair of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee. Mr. Ono possesses an abundance of professional expertise and has long been involved in the planning and implementation of circular economy policies, including waste management. He also played a significant role in developing the Osaka Blue Ocean vision at the G20, which I have just shared with you. I'm sure that his speech later will provide you all with a clearer idea that Mr. Ono will substantially contribute to the treaty negotiation if he is appointed as co-chair. Finally, I would like to conclude my remarks by expressing my hope that the discussion among government officials, NGOs, researchers, and business experts at today's dialogue will be fruitful in order to step forward to tackle plastic pollution. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll ask Mr. Ono to turn on his mic and also remind people watching, underneath the streaming, there's a Q&A widget. You can start submitting questions anytime now. So yeah, and try to put your name on where you're from. Thank you, Mr. Ono. The floor is yours.
Jennifer, thank you very much, and good morning and good evening. I'm very happy to be here with you, and thanks, Jennifer, for creating this opportunity. As Morishita-san said, the adoption of the UNEA resolution End Plastic Pollution was a landmark achievement towards ending plastic pollution, including in the marine environment. In the build-up, Japan proposed a draft resolution providing the basis of discussions at UNEA 5.2. Our hope was to build a legally binding instrument taking all countries on board and addressing whole life cycle of plastic, from design and production to waste management, in a well-balanced manner. I believe this hope was fulfilled. The resolution draws the starting line for the negotiation at the Intergovernmental Negotiation Committee, or INC. It is one of the fruits of the efforts of previous international, regional, and national initiatives to tackle plastic pollution. In particular, the core concept and approach of Osaka Blue Ocean vision and its implementation framework are well reflected in it, namely the concept of wise use of plastics and no leakage to the environment, and nationally driven implementation. Looking back to when I was leading the G20 discussions in 2019, I want to stress the pivotal contribution of US government. There were intensive discussions with my US counterparts throughout the whole year. I also had many chances of discussions with a variety of stakeholders, such as industry groups, NGOs, and think tanks. I was really impressed and inspired by all of their constructive engagement and unanimous support for preventing plastic pollution. I'm happy to see both countries' collaboration continued in the process of developing the UNEA resolution. And I'm confident that we could continue to work together to call for developing an enabling instrument for all countries. I note that China also actively engaged in the discussions in Nairobi, with their emphasis on being the importance of sound waste management systems. Next, let me elaborate on Japan's support to developing countries. A lot of studies reveal that most plastic leakage to the environment occurs due to mismanaged waste management, a fraud collection and treatment system, and the lack of capacity in its operation. This fact indicates improving waste management systems, especially in developing countries, can have a dramatic effect in reducing plastic pollution into the environment. Japan has been providing assistance to many countries, in particular in the Indo-Pacific region. I myself have long been working for policy development, capacity building, and infrastructure development in many developing countries in need. Let me draw your attention to the JICA Clean Cities Initiative and the African Green Cities Program platform as a program with such features. It is my belief that building an international framework should go hand in hand with the concrete initiatives and projects addressing ground level needs. Now, I'd like to turn to my candidacy. With great honor and personal joy, I have been nominated by the government of Japan as candidate for the co-chair of the INC to develop an international legally binding instrument on plastic pollution, including in the marine environment. This really is a challenging task, but I say challenge accepted. I'm optimistic because all countries are fully aware of this issue and most of them have already been implementing various measures and actions. I'm confident that we can reach another brilliant landmark in the future negotiation. In the event of my election to co-chair, I'd carefully listen to the voices of each and every country, respecting the party-driven process, and devote myself to the creation of an ambitious and effective framework by the end of 2024 that can be embraced by all countries. Thank you for your support, and thank you, Jennifer.
Well, thank you for good news that you got nominated. And thank you very much for the comments and giving us kind of the overview of Japan's role. And now, Lark, passing the virtual mic to you now.
Thanks so much. And thanks again. I echo the thanks that our Japanese colleagues expressed. It's really a pleasure to be here today. As Jennifer said, my name is Lark Williams. I am the lead negotiator on plastic pollution, and I also lead our waste management team that does a variety of engagement on waste-related issues. And we work very closely with other colleagues and offices in the department that work on marine debris and sea-based sources. So I think we've heard a lot about the efforts, and I'll talk a little bit about UNEA, but I wanted to give a sense of the backdrop that we're working against. And I think my colleagues from Japan were, Director General Ono were critical in pointing out many countries have done a lot of bilateral assistance in this space and have worked hard to help countries, come up to speed. And, the United States government is not alone in that. We've, our EPA, our NOAA, our Department of Energy have really looked at aspects of this. EPA put out a waste management guide for developing countries to help them come up to speed. NOAA's got a number of marine debris projects here and elsewhere that are helping countries think about this issue and regulations both on the land-based and sea-based side. Our Department of Energy is looking at different materials that can sort of, potentially be alternatives to plastic. And I would say the vanguard of our work, especially in Southeast Asia, is under USAID's Clean Cities Blue Ocean. We've got tremendous projects in Vietnam and other countries. So I think under that backdrop, when we look at how we got here, it's clear that there's been a lot of bilateral assistance, a lot of engagement, but it kind of wasn't enough to sort of push us over the edge to kind of make progress. And so I think that's what we saw as we went into the UNEA negotiations. And I would really like to just really note and appreciate Japan's leadership on plastic pollution. Going into the negotiations, I think Japan really set out this very good vision of how we could come together in a way under COVID, under the constraints of the pandemic, to think about a path forward. It is very hard to negotiate virtually. It was very unclear to people, how we were going to make progress. We haven't had as many of the robust conversations on the margins of other meetings we usually have going into this process. And so to have Japan come out and set out a very, what I think is neutral vision that really pushed a lot of the difficult substantive discussions into the INC process was definitely welcomed by this delegation. I think it was helpful for us to see many visions going into this process, and so really appreciate Japan's leadership, and really I look forward to continuing to working with them. So I think they gave some highlights, but I wanted to just maybe level set a bit. So for folks that may not be familiar with what the United Nations Environment Assembly is and how it sort of took this decision, it was established as a result of the UN Conference on Sustainable Development, what people affectionately call Rio+20, which took place in June 2012. It meets every 2 years, and it sets really global priorities around environmental policy and developing international environmental law. It's a place to catalyze action. It also serves as the governing body for the United Nations Environment Program. And so UNEA, so the United Nations Environment Assembly, has really looked at this issue since its inception in 2014. And it's considered this from a variety of aspects, ocean plastic pollution, marine plastic litter, and microplastics, really thinking about it. And I think we've seen this evolution from this marine plastic litter, microplastic space into where we came out. And so, which is, this year, countries came together, all 193 of them came together, or at least the ones that were present, and they adopted a resolution entitled "End Plastic Pollution Towards an International Legally Binding Instrument." And I can, I'll put a link in the chat for folks. So if anybody hasn't seen the resolution, Jennifer, if you could get that distributed out to folks, I think that might be helpful. And so this resolution establishes an intergovernmental negotiating committee, what we call an INC, to develop a global agreement on plastic pollution. And it has many of the elements that Japan and our colleagues from Rwanda and Peru articulated, which is that you wanted a legally binding instrument, they wanted to focus on plastic pollution, and really this resolution to help us figure out the next step forward. From the US perspective, last November, we really saw a change, and it was a testament to this administration. The Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, announced our support for global action and a global agreement on plastic pollution. And so from there, we've been really appreciative of the approaches set out and how countries have sort of looked at this. And when we look at the UNEA resolution, we think it's actually quite good. It does everything we need to do. It outlines many of the provisions we need to see in a global agreement without sort of prejudging them, and then offers a path forward for negotiating and really considering very important elements in the negotiations. When you look at that resolution, it's paragraph 3, and then it's that paragraph 3 and 4 sort of outline the provisions and then the considerations. But I really want to point to just a few things in the resolution that I think are going to be helpful for understanding how we're going to move forward. One is that it takes a country-driven approach, and that's critical because I think that's our path towards ambition. Different countries, favor different approaches. We saw elements of that in the negotiation process. You had India come in at the last minute with a vision that was a non-legally binding instrument, and some concerns about how this was going to shape out. And so, when we think about this, taking a country and driven approach means countries can structure how they're approaching the negotiations, favoring where it's most impactful in their country to engage across the life cycle. And it really recognizes sort of countries' different contexts, regulations, legislations, policies related to addressing plastic pollution and how to do it in an environmentally sound manner. And so we think it's really helpful that the INC sort of left some openness there, but recognize that this country-driven approach is so important. And one of the ways that can be a vehicle to do that is really taking national action plans and using national action plans as an important part of implementation of an objective of a global agreement. So that's one way we envision this, is building ambition so that you have a big tent approach. Countries can really come in. The second is that we recognize countries can't solve this alone. We need to have a broader tent than I think in many ways we've seen before. We need to crowd in people into this space to help, recognize that, it's not just governments that are going to governments are going to have the obligations, but it's not just governments that can solve this problem alone. It's clear stakeholders have a lot to offer in terms of mobilizing resources, technical, potentially financial. They have solutions. They're going to be they need to be partners in this process. And I think there's a lot of interest from the private sector. Civil society is demonstrated by Ocean Conservancy today. Subnational governments are very critical to this. Waste management is so much of a local level. And so that's why I think it's great that the INC provides for a way to do this. And this is something the United States really championed, which is initiating a multi-stakeholder action agenda. And we definitely need to think about the name, but the premise is that we will be able to recognize and be innovative in our approach to stakeholder engagement, that we can, envision a complementary form that could really serve as something that means alongside of the governing body of a global agreement and strengthens cooperation, partnerships, finds ways to be ambitious, not just in government obligations, but also in looking at what stakeholders are doing, what the private sector is doing in these spaces. And so I wanted to highlight those two elements because I think those are going to be critical to our success moving forward. So what is the road ahead? How are we going to get there? So this year, the first meeting is an ad hoc open-ended expert group. That's at the end of this month. It's an opportunity to work through many of the procedural matters. I expect a lot of chatter on the margins for people to start to, hear from each other about some of the substance related to the INC. And that OEG, open-ended working group meeting, is in Dakar, Senegal at the end of the month. But then when we're going to get into the meat of this negotiation is at the INC. It hasn't been scheduled yet, but it is going to be likely at the end of the year with the goal of completing its work, completing the text of an instrument, by 2024. That is a very ambitious timeline. Many global agreements have taken a bit longer than that, but I think it's a testament that countries are so passionate about this. They're willing to set aside their resources and time to make this actionable. And we've seen, the tremendous interest going into UNEA sort of continue through to the lead up into this INC process, including for that multi-stakeholder approach, which the organizers have found ways to sort of integrate into this, even this first procedural meeting. So one of the things, from a US perspective, how do we sort of build our position? I work with over 15 interagency partners to sort of think through this issue. It's a whole of government approach. They are going to bring the expertise from NIST, from Department of Energy, NOAA, that's EPA, to really help us solve this problem. It's really going to take a whole of government effort. And I think, it's kind of intrinsic to the problem. This is something that's so cross-sectoral across many parts of our economy that we really need to think about this from every aspect. So I'll stop there, but maybe my last note is that I am so happy to do this with my Japanese colleagues and some of my NGO colleagues. This is just a great opportunity. And again, Jennifer, thank you so much for inviting us.
No, thank you. I mean, again, I've had a great time in these 2 years bringing together a lot of, again, Japanese, Chinese, American, Southeast Asians. And I want to note to, reiterate, the kind of echo what Lark was just saying, that a lot of the NGO folks who I've had on my panels and writing for me have received support from the Japanese government, like the Countermeasures Project, USAID supporting lots of different efforts, and also the business sector as well. So yeah, it's not just whole, it's whole of everybody, right? So how about let's speaking of everybody, let's switch over to our NGO speakers. So we're gonna start with Felipe Victoria, who is the Senior Manager for International Plastic Policy at Osha Conservancy. And he's going to highlight what OC, as they say in the business, what their work is on the Global Plastic Treaty, because again, this isn't just a gov to gov thing. There's a whole of everybody approach, and also how their engagement with the Global Plastic Treaty could shape their work on the ground in Southeast Asia. And we have Bien Tran, who one of the first people I talked to when I got my grant to work on this project. So happy you could come today, Van. So she's the Vietnam Senior Manager at Osha Conservancy, and she's going to give us some stories about the kind of work that they're doing on the ground. And this is what I've been doing for the past 2 years, getting the stories about what's happening. And yeah, I'll let you guys tell your story, because you're going to see a lot of synergy with what Lark was mentioning and what our first two speakers talked about. Want to remind the audience, I'm starting to get some questions in. Please submit your questions into the widget. If it's for a specific speaker, let me know. I'll keep them here, but all right, I'm going to mute myself. Vien, could you share your PowerPoint? And you share the PowerPoint, and then I think Felipe talks first.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jennifer, for your kind invitation, for having us all here. I want to first and foremost thank Mr. Ono-san, Mr. Morishita-san, and Ms. Williams for their leadership for the last few months to be able to finally come for us to have the resolution at UNIA. It was impressive to see their work and their commitment to get this that ball across the line, and also their leadership for the coming months and years to finally reach that comprehensive and consensus-driven agreement. And we're really thankful for their leadership, and also at the U.S. government and State Department for all their continued support and work for all the different projects that we do in Southeast Asia. So thank you, everyone. My name is Felipe Victoria, the Senior Manager for International Plastics Policy at Ocean Conservancy, as Jennifer was explaining. And I want to pick up on something that Ms. Williams said, which is that even though, of course, the governments have a key role in this agreement, it's not only governments alone, it's not only their responsibility to be able to drive the ambition and achieve the success of this agreement, and of which so much depends upon. I wouldn't want to quickly show the picture that we have in front of us. This is an artwork designed by a very international renowned artist, and it sort of shows in a very graphic way plastic coming out of the tap water. This was at the entrance of UNIA, of the UN headquarters during the UNIA meeting in Nairobi. And it was a very powerful reminder every day for all of us that were there on the ground of the importance of the issues being debated. And I think this just helped also one more drop in the cup of ambition of everyone getting around the table to negotiate such an important resolution that has given the INC the mandate. Next slide, please. So that's me right there at the actual tab during the negotiations. We also believe, just as Ms. Williams said, that this is a responsibility for all of us. Ocean Conservancy was underground, trying to rally stakeholders, building consensus, trying to build partnerships to advance this agreement forward. We believe in bridge building. We believe in broad consensus. We believe in ambition. And we saw that there on the ground. We were happy that we were able to contribute. And these gentlemen and ladies on the left side of the screen of this picture are the secretariat of the Global Waste Pickers Association. They were there on the ground, representatives from the 5 continents, to show also their role and the ambition of the informal sector. Many of them marginalized communities, many of them working under very harsh conditions, but also key pivotal when it comes to the actual work of collecting garbage in cities and countries and local governments all across the world. It was very powerful. I had the chance to meet them several times to discuss a little bit of their priorities, a little bit of their work conditions, a little bit of what they wanted to see out of the governments and from civil society as well. And it was extremely powerful to listen to their testimony, and also them being on the ground, meeting with government officials meeting with them, everyone, let's say, rowing toward the same direction in a common cause. And it was a very powerful reminder of the things that we can achieve when we all work together in that sense. And Ocean Conservancy, next screen, please. It's also a strong supporter of some of the priorities that Ms. Williams and our Japanese colleagues were explaining, which we would, let's say, try to see and achieve by this agreement. And just as a general rundown, We support the robust and standardized metrics for establishing country bases and progress against those baselines. We believe in a strong, adequate financial support, mobilizing also, as Ms. Williams was saying, the private sector, other institutions in a full approach to the implementation of many of these solutions for ambitious strategies. Also, the elevation of the informal sector to be recognized, to be included into this agreement. This is something that they would really want to see. Of course, promote the development and implementation of national action plans, taking into account the realities of those countries, but also the local governments, which usually have the mandate for many of the waste picking and recycling mandate for those procedures. And finally, we advocate for the inclusion of ghost gear in the international agreement. This is the most dangerous marine debris in the ocean, one that is actually rarely spoken about, but it costs fishermen and the planet a huge amount of lost catch, of environmental degradation, of biodiversity loss. And next slide, please. And last but not least, I will just want to mention and close with a final note, and is the gavel. This is the Minister of Development of Norway. He was the president of the UNIA that passed the ambitious resolution that we were just discussing. And the gavel that he holds in his hand was a gift of the Association of Waste Pickers of Kenya. And it was substituted, the one that they had there, for this one, which is done of recycled materials. And so Kenya has a very vibrant recycling sector that are trying to find innovative ways of putting back the circularity of the materials into the economy. And a part of them is building new instruments with recycled trash. And this was a gift that one of the gentlemen that was in my previous picture gave the Minister of Norway, and he was able to finally drop the gavel on the approval of the resolution with a recycled gavel. And I thought it was a very momentous thing to actually see it firsthand. And we congratulate everyone for that ambition shown. And we just now look forward to the future to continue that same level of ambition. And we are always at the disposal of governments, private sector, and other civil society institutions to help build those partnerships, drive that consensus, and be an active contributor to this process. Thank you, Jennifer. Back to you.
Thanks so much. You surprised me. I didn't know the story of the gavel. I love it. Vian, why don't you, you're on the same PowerPoint. Why don't you just continue the story? Now we're moving from what was happening, the big overview, and now here's Vian on the ground.
Hi, everybody. I'm Vian Trần. So I'm so glad that I can be here today to talk about our effort to support Vietnam in combating marine plastic debris. So currently we have several programs to support Vietnam. First, we are working to support Vietnam National Action Plan on marine plastic waste management through a project named Accelerating Efforts to Reduce Ocean Plastic in Vietnam. Scientific research will to provide a database for policy decision making, and capacity building will be one of the key components of this project, plus communication outreach to increase public awareness about the issues and support people behavior change. At the same time, we are installing 5 trash capture devices along the Red River in Namdin. Scientific research will be conducted to evaluate the efficacy of the devices. We will also have public opinion surveys before and after installing those trash trappers to evaluate the awareness of people living in near the project location in Namdin. And we also have Urban Ocean. Urban Ocean is an initiative to engage cities in the fight for clean and healthy seas by improving municipal waste collection and management system. Working with leaders from cities, government, academia, civil society, and the private sector, Urban Ocean will develop best practices for embedding the reduction of marine plastic waste into other core cities priorities like public health, economic growth, or job creation. Urban Ocean will provide a platform for cities to learn from, inspire, challenge, and support each other on the circular economy journey. Gunther actually has joined Urban Ocean as a learning city together with other cities from Malaysia, Indonesia, India, and Panama. Finally, understanding the challenges of collecting and managing low-value plastic, we have launched an initiative called Advancing Solution to Plastic Pollution through Inclusive Recycling, or ASPIRE. This initiative offers an incentive program for informal waste collector who, with at least like 90% waste picker, identify women and collected low value waste to end markets, then share learnings with policymakers. The pilot projects take place in Vietnam and Colombia. Partnership is always one of our key successful for our work, especially during the pandemic when we all couldn't travel. With all engagements I just mentioned, we have collaborated with both local partner and international partner. For local partner, we have 3 NGOs and 2 universities, and international, we are working with University of Georgia and University of Toronto. As mentioned, scientific research is one of the key components of our programs. We have research to build database for policy decision making. One of them is the Circularity Assessment Protocol, or we call CAP, developed by Circularity Informatics Labs in the University of Georgia. CAP is a standardized assessment protocol to inform decision maker through collecting data on plastic uses at the community level. So basically, the CAP is use hub and spoke models to holistically characterize how consumer plastic flows into a communities, it consumed and flows out either through waste management system or leakage into the environment. For Vietnam, we already conducted CAP in 3 cities, 2 in the north, Hanoi and Nam Định, and 1 in the south, Cần Thơ. And there are some similar key findings and opportunities for across 3 cities, but the results from Nam Định and Hanoi are more alike, while the results for Cần Thơ is a little bit different. For example, materials of top items in convenience store, or the to-go items, or even the types of litter. More detail about the results and recommendation you can find is published in these links. Together with CAP, we also have shoreline assessment. With this research, we aim to quantify and characterize anthropogenic debris like plastic, metal, glass along shorelines at 8 different sites across Vietnam. We also provide series of training workshops for local researchers to build capacity for local experts. In Nam Định specifically, we also use this research to evaluate the efficacy of the trash capture devices. We believe that communication to improve public awareness is very important. In Ocean Conservancy, in collaboration with local partners, we proactively communicate with the public in many different approaches, including events, communication board, articles, blogs, and annual coastal cleanup. We also produce video to increase public awareness, and we're so proud that our most recent video got more than 1 million views. That encourages us to continue working creatively to communicate with people and increase public awareness. That's all we have for today. Thank you for your listening, and we are looking forward for your questions.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you could unshare your screen. And yeah, no, I've really enjoyed those videos, and yeah, thank you for the subtitles in them too. No, but thank you so much. I mean, and I want to make sure that if some of you watching are new, haven't come to my events in the past, I mean, the Ocean Conservancy, fabulous organizations, but there are lots of other grassroots groups that, again, often working with US and Japanese organizations and similar things, you know, also been looking a lot of the grassroots ground up work in China. So it's an exciting time, and this kind of work does, and I'm sure that as our opening speakers will agree, that this, like the kind of data work that you were doing, incredibly vital for the negotiations. All right, so let's move on. Next, we have Dr. Apushi Tsunami. He's the president of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, and he's also the president of the foundation's Ocean Policy Research Institute. So he's our ocean man here today. Really appreciate you coming to talk. He's going to be examining a little bit more of Japan's expanding plastic waste action at home and also abroad, and making some comments about potential US-Japan cooperation in this space. So Dr. Tsunami, thank you so much for joining us today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I also like to echo the previous speakers to thank the Jennifer and the Wilson Center for hosting this very important webinar and on the marine plastics. And well, the Sasakawa Peace Foundation is one of the leading nonprofit civil society actors in Japan, really combating the issue of ocean and also conservation and marine plastics and so on and so forth. And we're very active, engaged in a lot of activities, both domestically and then also internationally. And I think the Lark was saying about the importance of partnership. We are all working very closely with our Japanese government, particularly Minister of Environment, for instance, on the Plastic Smart campaign. Our sister foundation, Nippon Foundation, and myself are actively engaged in the civil society movements on combating this issue of marine plastics, including something like the beach cleanup campaign, and also awarding some of the best practices for during this the Plastics Zero Week campaign. To identify the best practices of the local activities. And also we are also working closely with the local governments, particularly the surrounding the prefectures of the surrounding the inland sea of Japan. We call it the Setouchi Ocean X project, which is creating a platform for both the local governments, private sectors, other nonprofits or the volunteering organizations to work together to solve the issue of the marine plastics pollution inside of the inland sea, which really cuts across different prefectural coordination. And I think this is one of the important roles that our foundation can play, is to create that kind of a coordinating platform for different prefectures and across different jurisdictions and governmental organizations. And more in the international front, for instance, we also working with countries like neighboring countries like China, Korea, on a dialogue of the addressing common interest of the marine plastics, and also the Southeast Asian countries. And recently, we worked together with other international partners to help the Palau to host our ocean conference, which was one of the first, for the first time, the small islands developing state that was hosting this international event on the ocean conservation. And I think this is very important time for all of us to really sit together and to come up with a good solution, because all these developing countries that are facing coming out of the COVID, that are really hurting their economies and their how to really come back from the impact of the COVID that really took, and how do they come up with a sort of more sustainable way to blue recovery, what we call it, from the ocean impact, which is very important timing for all of us to discuss and to provide the solution. Think about the solutions for these, particularly those small island developing states and other coastal states, to really to come up with this kind of solution to this. Second thing I wanted to just briefly mention is the among all these, marine plastic issues, I think we're now focusing on the issue of ghost nets and fishing gear issues. And this is something that I think needs to be very one of the top priorities for to solve the marine plastic issue at the moment. And I think this is where we need to have a more collaboration with different countries and the stakeholders to come up with a multiple way of solutions to really fight this ghost net issue. I think this is very critical, I think, to come up with how to manage the fish nets and collections and of all these ghost nets and other things that all need the international and multi-stakeholder cooperation in this issue. And that lastly, with the US-Japan cooperation, one of the key approach to the marine plastic is to find the alternative materials for plastics and the biodegradable materials as quick as possible. We need to accelerate the innovation in this area. The US and Japan and my colleagues in other part of the world are facing this what we call the valley of death issue, where we have small startups and the more small size companies that have developed the technology to really create the biodegradable materials, but they need to be scaled. There's a lot of issues about financing. There are a lot of issues of making them more impact in society by growing and the size and find the market for this new biodegradable materials to replace the plastics. And we need to work together in how to overcome the issue of valley of death and make sure that these innovations really make the impact in society. And that's where US and Japan can lead in creating the market for these startups and the small size companies that came up with these new technologies to help us solve this issue. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I'm going to ask a couple of questions and take some questions from the audience, and then I'll have Michi-san and Kobayashi-san make some comments in just a few minutes. Okay, everyone? Haha, I control the event, so it doesn't matter. No, I'm just joking. But just to really follow up real quickly, the last thing that you were saying, Dr. Tsunami, about the supporting technology and innovation. I kind of, maybe I want to toss this out maybe to find out, like for in the Global Plastic Treaty, is that going to be, do you put that in there? I mean, because I know that you mentioned financing, so maybe let's ask my Mr. Ono or Lark. Do you want to start out with that one?
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. So in terms of innovation issues, whether we should put that innovation technology issues in the coming treaty. And so I'm not sure whether it can happen or not, but there is a lot of innovative technologies developed in Japan, like biodegradable plastic, alternative materials, and other innovative solutions, which in terms of the Osaka Blue Ocean Vision and implementation framework, those kind of innovation elements are duly included in the implementation framework, which was agreed upon under the G20 scheme. So I do hope that the innovation is key to the future solution of the marine plastic litter issues. I'm not sure whether we can really put it or not, but I do hope that such kind of innovation and technology issues could be included in the treaty, and I think that could encourage all the industries and universities and other innovators to come into the world of the plastic pollution mitigation issues.
Thank you. And Lark, can you add something there?
Yeah, just briefly, I completely agree with what DG Ono shared. And I think, it's hard to know how something is going to be integrated, but we did, as negotiators, find a place for this. And so, when we look at paragraph 3B of that resolution, or paragraph 3, I guess it's subparagraph O, it does say to promote research and development of sustainable, affordable, innovative, and cost-efficient approaches. So I think, you know, we are thinking about it in a very similar way. We're not, the solutions we have now are not going to be the solutions that get us out of this problem. There's going to be a tremendous amount of technological policy innovation that's going to come out that's going to help us. And we've learned a lot in the past few years. And I expect we'll see, you know, logarithmic growth, exponential growth in this sort of, in the solutions that we need. So we definitely see innovation as a part of the solution. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, kind of following up on that, I have a speaker, Sato Haru. I don't know the affiliation, but made the comments. Japan is the second largest generator of single-use plastics. I think the US were #1. China is also quite up there, just for the record. But in Japan, they're second largest in terms of on a per capita basis, and also exports large parts of hard to recycle plastics to countries that lack infrastructure to deal with the waste. And I think when they're referring to the Global Plastic Treaty, will there be a focus on upstream solutions to actually reduce the production in the first place? So, I mean, I'll see if someone, maybe either Lark, do you want to take that on? And then I'd like to hear from some of the other panelists about your thoughts, like Ocean Conservancy, about literally turning off the tap.
Sure, I can kick us off. I mean, I think we're going to need solutions across the life cycle, and it's really going to be context dependent. You know, I think we've heard from small island nations that, you know, they're not producers of plastic. I don't think we're going to sort of impose upstream solutions on them when their needs are quite different. And so, you know, I think there are ways to approach this from a demand side, from a supply side. And these are many of the elements, you know, countries are going to need to work through together. I will say that, you know, there's no silver bullet. There are so many aspects of this. There are so many types of plastic. I think we really need to think holistically about this, and it is going to take some time. And ideally, we're going to have a mechanism that can start and strengthen. We need to start somewhere. We know that. We'll probably also need to strengthen as time goes on to continue to drive innovation, to drive ambition.
And Felipe, is there something that where OC comes in on this issue?
Yeah, in general, Jennifer, I agree, of course, with the statements of the previous speakers. I would just like to add also the importance of building those partnerships to achieve those solutions. I think SDG 17, building partnerships, is key and fundamental to achieve this. Building partnerships from the upstream country to the downstream country, from the plastic producers to the plastic waste pickers, et cetera, right? So I think that is one key element that is needed to have that ambition and to actually fulfill the ambition. And the second would probably be the mobilization of finance and us thinking a little bit outside of the box when it comes to innovative financial mechanisms to put a little bit of the market aspects into this, to have rewards for quote unquote good behavior, or to drive the policy, and to have some type of retribution for those that might not follow the rules, etc. Plus also mobilizing the finance to help the least developed countries to build those partnerships, to get, let's say, the machinery well oiled to solve this problem through the finance that is so much needed actually to address this issue. So that will be our general comments on that, Jennifer. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to hop in on that question? Just want to double check. Okay, we'll remind the audience you could keep submitting questions here. There was one related from Joshua Palfreyman, who's the director of solid waste management practice at DAI, and he said the webinar is interesting, so hurrah. At the solid waste management practice where he is, they've recently launched a PET recyclability tool to assess the recyclability of virgin PET and rPET. And the basic gist, the question, it goes on a little bit, but just the question of like markets, like, you know, like encouraging the markets that recognizing we can't recycle our way out of the plastic problem, but in the global treaty or in other efforts, what do you think needs to happen to help kind of improve the recycling market? Is that part of the global plastic treaty to deal with the better market for recycling? Kobashi, is that anything you can answer on? I know you haven't introduced you yet.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer.
Kobashi-san is one of the negotiators for the Japan side on the plastic treaty. Kobashi-san?
Yes, and like you can see in this picture, had the privilege of going to Nairobi and participating in the negotiations. It was truly a great experience. Seeing all these negotiators from different countries reaching out and trying to find common ground, which we successfully did. And coming back to your question about this recycling, how different initiatives, different ways we can promote that. Yes, there's many ways, and regulation is not the only answer. For example, in Japan, the Association for Beverages, they came up with this voluntary initiative where they completely banned PET bottles with color. So all the PET bottles consumed in Japan are clear, and by making this uniformity, when they collect these PET bottles, it makes it much more easier to recycle high-grade recycled materials. And we have many different schemes to volunteer, where consumers can take their empty bottles, put it in this machine, and it will generate some e-money. So it's good for a wallet, good for the environment. And yes, these voluntary schemes can also play a significant role in changing consumer behavior, changing how much of these plastics prevent these from getting into the environment. Just the other day, my team had the privilege of taking our environment minister to some beach cleanup activities. That was in western parts of Japan. Actually, Dr. Tsunami talked about our inland sea in the Seto Naikai region. Our minister went there, and we gave him a pair of gloves and bag and tongs, and yeah, he was cleaning up with the local middle school and high school students. And you don't have to go to these conference centers to understand the problem. The beach already tells you, because going there, picking up the plastic bottles and toothbrushes and other random objects, the thought that comes to mind was that there were so many steps that could have saved them from becoming marine plastic litter. And doing something upstream, reducing these single-use, changing behavior, maybe cutting down on unnecessary, overuse. That's a solution. But also, consumers. I don't think it could have been that hard to find a recycling bin and find a proper way of disposing it. So, across the stream, from upstream to downstream, there's so many ways you can tackle this issue. And like Lark said, there is no silver bullet. I mean, we hear this expression in the climate process all the time, but the plastics pollution is the same thing. It's a complex issue, and it needs a complex response. We need to have everything that we have at our disposal to solve this issue. So there is no single panacea to this issue, and going to the beach can tell you that. And also, but you also find fishing gear and this idea about ghost gear, and that is one area for room for innovation, because some of these plastic products, you inevitably use them in the environment, which leads to possibility of these leakage into the environment. And if you have the right technology, the innovations to replace them to some materials where it's ocean biodegradable, it leaves negligible impact to the ocean environment and ecosystems, that will really help all this pressure that we are putting on the health of our oceans. So yes, there's no measure that should be left untouched. We need innovation, we need upstream, we need downstream, and now the devil lies in the details, they say. So in the upcoming negotiations at the INC, we really need to start thinking, because paragraph 3 talks about, this instrument would have both binding and voluntary approaches. And the next paragraph also calls for us to consider obligations and voluntary approaches. It doesn't say which provisions, which measures should be binding and which should be voluntary approaches. And those are the difficult discussions that we have to face. But coming back to that beach cleanup experience, and also the experience in Nairobi, I felt that everyone was really talking about the same thing, but talking about it in a different way. But everyone had this feeling that we need to do something, we need to come to an agreement, we need to step up our actions. And I really hope to see that kind of momentum be taken forward in the future processes. Sorry, I went everywhere.
No, but you'll be there. No, I wanted to ask you. So actually, so
I will be there.
You will be there, and Black will too. Half the panel will be there. So actually, as you were talking and you mentioned the ghost gear, I got a question from Rebecca Passman. Could Ocean Conservancy identify potential ways to address ghost gear in the international agreement? Because she clearly noticed that you had that as a bullet point, Felipe. So what is it you guys are recommending?
Well, Jennifer, thank you for this question, and thank you to Mr. Kobayashi for also talking about ghost gear. We think this is one of the least talked about topics because, and I understand there might be other priorities, but we also, as Mr. Kobayashi said, believe it's fundamental to address ghost gear to release the pressure of the environment. And that leads to so many damaging and biodiversity loss because many of the illegal shipping crews, when police comes, they cut the nets off and those nets sink to the ocean, trapping all type of life and not even being able to harvest that. And so, and there's many other topics and we could definitely address that. But to go to your question specifically, Ocean Conservancy is the home of one of our key signature initiatives called the Global Ghost Gear Initiative. And we actually drive partnerships around the topic of ghost gear. Just as an example, this week, 3 days this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we will have a global workshop regarding specific ghost gear with government, civil society, and companies worldwide on all the different actions that we're doing, also sharing best practices when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to fishing, gear marking, biodegradable materials, innovative materials, et cetera, that Mr. Kobayashi was referring. And so Ocean Conservancy is the home of the Global Ghost Gear Initiative. That initiative right now has 21 signatory countries. During our ocean conference in Palau, 2 new governments joined the Global Ghost Gear Initiative. South Korea, Japan's neighbor, and so it's the first Asian country, and also Spain, the first Mediterranean country, also joined the Global Ghost Gear Initiative. And there are more than 150 different partners that belong also to the Global Ghost Gear Initiative. These are from civil society organizations to massive companies that fish or have fish products in general and are in the fishing industry, but also as well artisanal or local fishing communities and their associations. So we pretty much cover all across the board, making sure that all the partners, government, civil society, companies are talking about the same issues in the same language to address this global scourge. We encourage the US already, of course, makes part of the Global Ghost Gear Initiative. We encourage Japan to also at some point be able to join the Global Ghost Gear Initiative to drive this ambition when it comes to actual implementation of many of our solutions that are in line with UN recommendations. And we work very closely with FAO, the Food Agriculture Organization, and many other multilateral fora as well, driving those innovative changes, legislation, policy, gear marking, etc., to address that. And I think the treaty, the agreement actually is a unique opportunity and chance to address this at a global level, do and put forth an overarching theme of the importance of addressing the entire life cycle, including this downstream, literally downstream at the bottom of the ocean issue. And we thank Mr. Kobayashi, Ms. Williams, and everyone else on this topic and their leadership when it comes to this, as many local communities depend their livelihoods depend on the health of the oceans, and they're being hugely impacted by this scourge of marine debris. So thank you for this. And to answer the question, this all the things that we're doing on that front and many more to come.
Well, it sounds good. It sounds like that you're the work that you're doing on it. You're like the one-stop shop. That's so, and it's good. And now I can see. Thank you for fleshing that out, because a lot of people.
Of course.
But also that real recognizing that the global plastic problem is not just the ghost gear, but it is one that I think maybe could have solutions could be faster than maybe some of the sticky ones. Like I just got a comment from Jane Mayer from the International Economics as a student at UG Ecological Economic Society, and asked the question about what about plastic packaging chip bags? Many different types of kind of like problematic plastics that really aren't recyclable. Can anyone make some comments on where you think that the Global Plastic Treaty or local action is taking positive steps in that, these problematic plastics? Someone want to leap in, or I'll call on you. What about in Vietnam? That because when you're working with the waste pickers, and are you guys looking into issues of like what to do with the problematic plastics, or is there something in the Vietnam's National Plastic Action Plan that addresses this?
Yeah, so basically based on our CAP report, across 3 cities, we also like the majority of top items in convenience store are packed in multi-layer film, which is not ready for recycling. And also the problem with like recycling system in Vietnam is a little bit out of date and it's costly and not ready to do like massive recycling. So that's why not like 80% of the trash will go to landfill. So that's why it's a little bit challenging to solve the problems, because most of cheap packaging low value plastic, and there's no system to have a special treatment for that. For our informal sector project, we give we offer the like incentive program for informal waste picker to pick up low value plastic, but we also try to find the end markets for those type of plastic as well. So it's really challenging, and we are on the way to find out.
Thank you so much. And maybe I'm going to want to turn to my kind of co-partner in crime on my plastic work, Michi-san. Can you talk just briefly about what you work at? Tell us a little bit about AREA and the kind of work that you've been doing in Southeast Asia, because some of that has touched on the problematic plastic issue. Can you tell us everyone a little bit about AREA and the kinds of impact you're having?
Thank you very much. Thank you for kind introduction. I'm working for Regional Knowledge Center for Marine Products Debris in Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, which is located in Jakarta. And the Regional Knowledge Center for Marine Products Debris was established in October 2019 with support of Ministry of Environment Japan. We developed the website to share the good practices in ASEAN Plus 3 region on marine plastic debris issue, including the PET bottle design for recycling and some other kind of the good practices in the region. Regarding the one of the difficulties, how to say, one of the plastics which are a little bit difficult to be recycled is multi-layer plastics, and also sachet, kind of small plastic bags. So it's it is very difficult to how to say recycle such kind of plastics. But yeah, Yeah, in case in Japan, such kind of multi-layer plastics can, yeah, there are some kind of technology, but probably it is not so kind of popular so far. So yeah, there are kind of technical solution also, but they need a kind of market to of the recycled product also. So yeah, that is one of the challenge probably. Yeah, and yeah, so and such kind of a, how say, the low grade plastic waste cannot be collected by the waste pickers. I mean, waste pickers also target the higher kind of value of the plastic waste. So it is a little bit difficult to collect such kind of the how say, the cheap plastic waste. So it is very important to improve the recyclability also, such as the kind of clear PET bottles, which have a good price. Then waste pickers can collect such kind of waste. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. But I do know that like some of the work that ARIA is doing, that's why ARIA, which also the Institute for Developing Economies in Japan, that's where Michi-san's home base is. That a lot of what I thought was kind of encouraging when looking at the work that you're doing, Michi-san, is that, you know, that you're talking to local business like the Dannon and the Coca-Colas, and then also local partners getting, you know, local grassroots groups. So I just want to kind of flag that you know, that Michi-san does this great work, and Michi-san and I are working together. So that would be US-Japanese cooperation. Just wanted to flag that for everyone. So Michi-san, do you have any questions for any of the other panelists here?
Yeah, I don't have much question right now, but I expect good kind of a negotiation to formulate plastic pollution treaties. So I'm looking forward to hearing the kind of the how say, the probably that there are some challenges and so on. So maybe we can, how to say, consider a kind of some solution also from based on the some good practices in the region.
Thank you so much, Michi-san. So maybe I have a question for Dr. Tsunami. Was kind of, I'd love to hear a little bit more about, because you gave us a good overview about what the Sasakawa Peace Foundation is doing with you know, in general, with, you know, working with the different communities. Can you tell us a little bit more about maybe another anecdote about the working with the local governments and this regional group? And do you see that, is this a kind of, are you creating a model that you think could be useful in other countries?
Yeah, I think one thing I mentioned about our role as to bring different like the government entities together to work on the same platform, and to pick the local prefectures that are surrounding one particular area that are sharing as a common a resource, and to identify the sources, the plastics that are coming into or really getting into this part of the ocean, and in this particular case, the Inland Sea. And it's very hard for any other government entity to come and say, hey, you are the polluter, you are the problem, the solution, the source of the problem. But you know, but we be able to, as a civil, as you know, as society, as an actor, to really to create an environment for everyone to actually share the same problem and work together. And if we can bring this model to other part of the regional network, and so that to really create the way for each government organizations and different private sectors and the schools and the volunteers that would really participate in the one sort of the platform. I think that's something that we're looking forward to produce. The challenge, of course, is to bring this to more international scene, where we could bring other different governments and agencies to work together on the particular area, particularly in in Asia, the parts of the area where Indian Ocean and that cross with the Pacific and all these very politically also sensitive areas that needs to be come together to work to create this platform. And I think we are looking forward to work with the organization like Area, for instance, where we could be partnered with and to create the kind of platform and best practice of bringing other multi-stakeholders to this issue. So,
well, good. And just a real quick question: in Japan, are Japanese cities having the same problem a lot of U.S. cities are? Is that some of the U.S. because we're no longer shipping as much of our waste overseas, having a lot of difficulty in actually recycling? Like in my state of Maryland, we're actually sending more of our waste, plastic and otherwise, to landfills and incinerators. Is that a trend line that you're seeing in Japan?
And I think Mr. Ono kind of mentioned this, that we, I think, are doing quite a good job in recycling in many ways, and especially in the city areas. But the source of the upstream problem with whether you have to identify what the source of that goes into the sewage and the rivers, and that goes directly, eventually ended up in the ocean. And so we have to have not only the cities, but also the local areas and up in the even the villages in the mountain area where to really come together to really identify and to study where the sources of these plastics are in the upstream, and working together with the downstream, where Mr. Kobayashi was mentioning about the beach cleanup. So bring the people from the upstream down there to work in the beach cleanup activities, and to feel like you're part of the on the sort of the same issue. Yeah. I think, but I think in the city size, I think we're doing quite a good job, I think, in recycling.
Good. Well, yeah, I know the rates are higher in Japan right now, but there's a move in the US with our Save Our Seas 2.0. I hosted someone who headed part of the study from the National Science Foundation, just how that in the US, there's really seen a lot more action. I mean, the cities have been doing it, but like at the federal level, I think there's going to be a lot more movement too. I've someone from Kobe University, Aji Hataji, said, how do you see the Global Plastic Treaty and the Basel Convention as one regime for plastic management? I'm kind of curious who might want, I don't know, Felipe, Lark, go ahead, and just make sure maybe not everyone knows what the Basel Convention is, but I think that's a really good question because that's about waste trade issues.
Hi, everyone, Lark Williams. So I'm actually also the Basel focal point for the United States, and that's the Basel Convention on Control of Transboundary Movement of Hazardous Waste and Their Disposal. And it's quite interesting. It's a really good question. I would say, when you have different conventions, they're actually legally distinct. So a Basel Convention covers the transboundary movement, and they recently took plastic waste amendments in 2019 that subject the majority of all hazardous plastic scrap and then non-hazardous mixed and contaminated, there's some descriptions there, to this prior informed consent procedure. And so what that means is that, for a country to be able to trade, if they're a party to the Basel Convention, they would need to sort of consent to the import of such materials, whether it's hazardous plastic scrap or mixed and contaminated. We are acutely aware of this as the United States is not a party of the Basel Convention. And so for us, there is a prohibition with parties in terms of trading with us. Well, I think that, as I said, they are legally distinct. I think, what this means is that a global agreement may not need to take on this transboundary movement aspect because the Basel Convention has covered it. And oftentimes we like to ensure that, when there is action on something in different places, the legal precedence, the distinction is preserved, recognizing that another convention has sort of an area there. So I think, holistically, I see these things working together in support of the same goals, even though they are legally distinct. And I would love to hear from other colleagues, because I know Japan is very active in the Basel Convention as well.
Someone like to say something about that? from Japan or Ocean Conservancy side on the Basel Convention, Global Plastic Treaty?
Yeah, I quickly want to just also agree with Lark's opinion regarding that. I think there are distinct conventions, and also they have very distinct processes, but they are intended to work together, right? And I think both will complement each other. I think that is at least the goal and the idea. The only maybe minor distinction would be that this global plastic agreement, at least its intention is to be a much broader consensus driven, meaning ideally all countries of the world will be part of this, while the Basel Convention, as Lark was saying, there are some countries that are not part of the Basel Convention. And I think this global agreement on plastic, its intention is to be much more overarching of many topics. And so there will be a lot more member states parties to this one, but the goal of this agreement would be to work in unison with already the mechanisms and the jurisprudence from the Basel Convention in itself. So, yeah.
Anyone else want to make a comment on this front? Oh yeah, Mr. Ono.
Yeah, thank you very much. And really, it's a very good question on the relationship between the coming new treaty and the Basel. And we noticed that there are many international legal system other than Basel Convention. It's a London Dumping Convention and Malpo Convention and others. In my sense, that the very international issues like the trade of hazardous waste could be dealt with the Basel Convention, and on the dumping issue at the open ocean issue could be dealt with by the London Dumping Treaty. In terms of the coming new treaty, my sense is that the central issue is the much more, the bottom-up type of nationally determined, nationally driven, activities like, the waste management plan or resource efficiency plan in each country, so that the whole of many treaties and with including the coming new treaty could formulate, the whole package of addressing plastic pollution as a whole. So we couldn't expect that the new treaty can address everything. We have many existing instruments, so we could work together and make coordination among those legal instruments that could make it a better world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just briefly, because I want to go back to the graph, because we've been like at the high level with the agreements, but Fien, I want to come back to you real quick about, in terms of the Global Plastic Treaty, what's the view from the grassroots groups that you've been working with? Because you've been working with like both the waste picker associations and a lot of the NGOs. Are they working with you to get their voices onto the treaty? Or tell us a little bit about the view from Vietnam on the treaty.
Yeah, so the NGO roles in Vietnam, they also give a lot of consulting and provide data to the government for them to join the global treaty. So basically, Vietnam has one of the key priority for them is to get enough data on the policy for them to make the decision on the policy, and to be able to get enough data, they need help from government, from the NGOs and other projects. So yeah, that's the key roles of the NGO in Vietnam.
And it sounds also like some of the work that like Dr. Tsunami, the group that the Sasakawa Peace Foundation is supporting, is also doing similar kind of work. Would you say, Dr. Tsunami, that in Japan, tell us a little bit about what Japanese groups are asking, demanding, pressuring, who knows, for Japan in the global treaty?
Yes, I think this, we are also working together with the local activity. I mean, the players and the civil society as a whole, we share the same view that Vietnam was saying, and from Vietnam. And so we are looking forward to this global movement that would really support us. Just one quick, I'm about the Basel thing also, but this sort of thing that, we worked on the sort of project and before on creating the latest recycle plant at the international port for the cruise ships. And when they come to the port, and the waste that are created by the cruise ships are not be able to download their waste to this latest recycling plant in the international ports, and because the Basel Convention and agreement. So I think that we have to have a very innovative way of really create a global solution wide, sort of the global sort of kind of a solution to this this plastic waste system. So I think this we're also looking forward to any international agreement on really to work together on this just conventional sort of a trade of the waste or the dumping waste, but we can all work together to solve this issue.
I mean, there's no silver bullet to this problem, and the sources of the problem are great. But hey, just throwing up the Ocean Conservancy, you guys looking at cruise ships?
Well, yes, we are actually, Jennifer. Well, not cruise ships specifically. We do have an entire team that works in shipping, and so we are working all across the shipping industry, from working with large shipping companies regarding standards and measurements. We're working also with some innovative companies trying to work on biofuels or green vessels in general. We work very closely with the International Maritime Organization as well regarding standards, measurements, et cetera, enforcement of regulations and policy. So we do work on that. And when we were actually at our Ocean Conference, we had actually even a side event and something specific regarding shipping. We also, and this is because we also see shipping as part of this overarching theme that we're discussing of advancing policy at all levels and all fronts, and being this a generational opportunity to be able to drive change all across the board. Right. And therefore, yes, we are working on that, and we're more than happy to discuss with any of you, anyone here on the panel, but if also people that are listening to us on any specifics that may be interested in collaborating or information if they need anything regarding all our work on shipping.
Well, thank you so much. We're coming in the last couple minutes, but I want to do kind of a quick round robin. Tell me something. Start with Kobayashi, but I want to ask a question. Everyone just say just real quickly in just a couple sentences. What makes you most excited or optimistic about the upcoming treaty negotiations? You have to be optimistic, right? Just what's like one thing that really is encouraging to you, or that you really want to make sure you see?
Yeah, the negotiations in Nairobi, everyone thought that there were quite big differences. Once we got to meet in person and talk through and explain what everyone was thinking, we were quickly realizing that we were talking about the same thing. I really hope and I really believe that we can carry on this good atmosphere in the upcoming negotiations. So yeah, good. Stay hopeful.
And Dr. Tsunami?
As I mentioned, I think this global agreement on where we are going, it will be very helpful for all civil society activities. So we're looking forward to this.
And your foundation and you guys are going to stay engaged on this, right?
Of course, yes.
Okay, good. And how about Felipe? Oh, you're muted still. I'll come back to you. Vien, what do you think about what makes you optimistic about the global treaty dialogues coming up?
Yeah, I think that will give us a chance to work together, like all stakeholders, all the parties can work together to solve one problem.
Okay, Felipe, did you get that?
Yes, for some reason my mute button just wouldn't turn on. Maybe I'm talking too much. Who knows?
I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, what I'm most excited about, Jennifer, is to see the level of ambition and commitment of the member states, in particular here, the US and Japan. We are very excited about that. And we're also extremely excited to be a relevant partner for Japan, for the US, but for all member states and other organizations to build partnerships, to drive consensus, to bring a constructive spirit to the conversation. And I think those two things, the ambition and the partnerships, are what keeps us motivated and awake at night sometimes.
Okay, how about Michi-san? Real short.
Yeah, I think we need a kind of a holistic kind of approaches. We need to do many things. So I think new treaties cover many areas. Yeah, that is my expectation. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Ono, just real quick, what are you going to see as what's going to be most optimistic?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I heard a lot of expectations from all over the world, like NGOs, government, and the prefectures, local governments. So I think we can put together all those expectations in one single treaty. So that's my hope.
Okay, and Lark, close us out with anything that you're kind of like, maybe that you're excited, or what you're excited about the upcoming.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's what everybody said, and what is sort of behind that is this amazing spirit of cooperation. We are at a pivotal moment in terms of environmental policy related to plastic pollution. And I think we have an opportunity to be ambitious, to crowd in all the partners we need, and to really make very, quick progress. And I think, you heard Go talk about when we were in person and we finally talked face to face, those barriers to sort of making progress fell down. And I think that momentum is going to drive us very quickly from 2022 to the end of 2024, where we really hope to have an ambitious, country-driven, innovative approach to solving this problem that really helps us just make very quick progress. So I'm excited about that. And it doesn't keep me up at night. It makes me rest easy.
Well, that's great. Well, it's also, part of me in my mind, back of my mind too, because some of you have kind of mentioned it, that because of COVID, there was no face-to-face. And I think that maybe some of the exuberance of getting back together helped put some wind in the sails of this. But again, the problem is clear, right? I mean, sometimes we talked about the climate change issue. It seems so vague. You can see the tap right behind right now. Kobayashi has the picture right behind him. It's here, it's now, and there needs to be action. But I want to thank you all for the great work that you're doing. I'm still going to keep active in this space. Next time we'll make sure we're going to get some Chinese folks online here to talk as well. Maybe after November, okay, or whenever that next talk we'll get kind of an upload. But thank you very much. I want to thank the audience for listening in and asking your questions, and have a good day. Some of you need to go to bed. It's late in Japan. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye bye.